I've been hearing the same thing everywhere I go lately. Coffee shop, gas stations, grocery stores. People saying Idaho doesn't feel like Idaho anymore. And look, I get it. I feel it too. The traffic on 95 on a Tuesday morning. The property tax bill that went up again. The new neighbor who moved in never introduced themselves and looked at you like you were weird for waving. Little things, but they add up. And if you lived here long enough, you know what Idaho felt like before, and you notice when something's off. So today, I want to talk about what's actually happening. Not to scare you, not to blame anybody, but because I think if we don't name it clearly, we can't fix it. And I do think we can fix it if we try. Quick thing before we dive in, I'm Trent, and this is Living Life in North Idaho. If you're thinking about making the move here, reach out at the number or email address listed on the screen, or scan the QR code and schedule a time to talk with me and my team. We'll help you figure out where you actually want to land here in Idaho and where you definitely don't want to land. Okay, let's go. Here's something you probably didn't expect me to say, and I'm going to catch a lot of flack for saying it. California is genuinely beautiful. I mean that. The coast, the redwoods, the farmers markets with food so good, it doesn't taste like the same category of things you buy here at Walmart. World-class restaurants, mountains and desert, and ocean within 2 hours of each other. I get why 40 million people choose to live there. And I'm not just saying that. I do go there several times a year. My family lives in Northern California. It's agricultural country, working farms, neighbors who actually know each other, the kind of place that feels a lot like Idaho, honestly. When I'm there, my cup gets filled and I come back feeling really good, actually. I'm also part of a group called the Abundant Brotherhood, a group of men who get together and actually be honest with each other about our struggles, about where we're at. We support each other spiritually and emotionally. And the whole philosophy is right there in the name. Abundance over scarcity. Believing there's enough rather than operating from fear that someone's going to take what's yours. These are good people. Some of the best I know, and a lot of them happen to be Californians. I know, it's terrible, right? So when I say Idaho is slowly turning into California, I want to be really clear. I'm not talking about the coastline. I'm not talking about the people who grew up there and love it. The problem was never California. The problem is what California convinced people was normal. And those ideas, they travel. When I'm down in California with my family or with the Brotherhood, everything feels right. Community, connection, real conversation. But then I step outside that circle and you can just feel it. There's a division in the air that's hard to explain until you've experienced it. People sorted into camps. Neighbors who are strangers by choice, an ambient suspicion that's just become the background noise. And you can see it in the practical stuff too. The gas prices, the taxes, regulations stacked on regulation, most of which was created to fix the problem that the last regulation caused. California has spent decades handing its problems to government. And government, being government, created more problems. And the people asked government to fix those. And around it goes. It's a cycle of dependency that's almost impossible to break once it's running because the system starts to actually need the problem in order to justify its own existence, which, if you think about it, is, that's what it was called, insane. Insane. That's what actually broke California. Not the weather, not the people. 3 specific ideas that move through the culture like a slow leak. And those same 3 ideas are what we need to watch out for here. Are we going to talk about those ideas? We're going to talk about those ideas. All right, idea number 1, government as the first call. At some point, California normalized the belief that when something goes wrong in your neighborhood, in your community, in your life, the answer is to call the government. Not your neighbor, not yourself, the government. And every time a community outsources a problem it used to solve on its own, it gets a little weaker and government gets a little bigger. Do that long enough and you get Sacramento. Congratulations, California. Idea number 2, redistribution as compassion. Now, there's a version of generosity that comes from the heart. You give because you want to, because someone needs it, and because that's who you are. And then there's the version California sold, that it's compassionate to take from people who have more. That fairness means the government forces the transfer of wealth from the people who built something to the people who didn't. That idea doesn't create abundance, it creates resentment. And eventually, the people doing the building just stop. It's a terrible trade. And idea number 3, division as identity. California didn't invent this one, but they really ran with it. The idea that your group, your political tribe, your income bracket, your grievance of choice is your primary identity. That the person across the street isn't your neighbor first, they're a member of some opposing category first. You do that long enough and empathy dies, community dies, and all you're left with is a gorgeous coastline full of people who genuinely cannot stand each other. Worth it! Here's the uncomfortable part though. Some of these ideas didn't come to Idaho with the moving trucks. Some of them were already here, and I'm not talking about something abstract. I'm talking about things you can point to right now. Idaho home values jumped 57% between 2019 and 2023. That's not a bad thing on its own. Your house went up in value. But what came with it is the part people don't talk about enough. Taxable value of primary residential property in Idaho increased 54.4% in a single year in 2022. The people who built lives here, who bought modest homes and paid them off, who never asked for much, they're getting squeezed out by a tax bill that doubled because somebody moved in next door and paid twice what the house was worth. That's not Idaho values. That's what happens when government expands to meet growth and somebody has to pay for it. And that somebody is always the person who is already here. Then there's the school board situation, which this is just stupid. In the West Bonner School District right here in North Idaho, low voter turnout over the years allowed outside ideological groups to take hold of a local school board. And it took a full recall election to fix it. The recall worked, but here's the thing, it only got that far because people weren't paying attention until it was already a crisis. Idaho's Republican State Party has now passed a resolution calling for partisan labels on school board ballots, specifically citing concerns about curriculum content in Idaho schools. Whether you agree with that move or not, the fact that it's a conversation we're having tells you everything about how much the ground has shifted. And the local elections are being decided by handfuls of voters, not thousands, handfuls. That's not a metaphor, that's the actual margin in race after race across the state, which means the people who show up decide everything. And right now, not enough of the right people are showing up. That's the symptom. And the question isn't whether Idaho could go the same direction as California. The question is whether Idahoans are paying close enough attention to stop it. So what actually makes Idaho different? Because it's not the mountains, it's not the gun laws, although those do help. It's not the license plate, it's the culture, a specific, real culture built on a few things that aren't complicated but are increasingly rare. Are we going to talk about Idaho's culture? We're going to talk about Idaho's culture. This might be shocking news for some of you, but up here, you are responsible for your own life. When something breaks in your house, in your neighborhood, wherever, the first call isn't a government office. It's to yourself or to the people around you. That belief, practiced across a whole community over a long time, creates something that government cannot replicate and money cannot buy. Your neighbor is your neighbor first. Not a demographic, not a political category, the person next door, the one whose dog gets out sometimes, the one you help move furniture for on a Saturday because you just do that. That's not policy, that's culture. And culture is the only thing that actually protects a place long term. And community is something you build, not something that happens to you. The harvest, the fire, the neighbor who's struggling and didn't ask for help but needs it. You show up, not because a program organized it, because that's how it works here. That's how it's always worked here. And here's the honest thing. Every person who moves to Idaho and actually embraces that culture makes Idaho stronger. Doesn't matter where they're from, every person who moves here expecting the government to solve their problems, who votes for whoever promises them the most, who treats their neighbors like strangers by default, makes it weaker. It's not about your zip code of origin, it's about what you're willing to carry. So how do we stop this from happening? I'm so glad you asked, I really am. I'm not going to be vague about this because vague doesn't help anybody. Vote in local elections. I know, But I mean it. Idaho is not won or lost in presidential years. It's won or lost in May primaries for school board, county commissioner, and city council. These are the people setting your property taxes, running your kids' schools, and deciding what gets built next to your house. Most of these races are decided by a few hundred votes. Your single vote in a local race matters more than your presidential vote by a factor of probably 1,000. So show up. Know who represents you locally. That's a radical idea, right? Name your school board members right now. Go ahead. If you can't, that's the first thing to fix. Get on the email list, attend one meeting. I promise it'll be the most boring 2 hours of your life, but it will matter more than almost anything else you do that month. And be the neighbor Idaho was built on. Learn the name of the person next door. Wave at the four-way stop. Bring something over when your neighbor's sick. None of that is political. All of it is foundational because division requires strangers, and it genuinely cannot survive when you have actual neighbors. And if you moved here from California or Oregon or Washington because you saw what was happening and you wanted something different, this is especially for you. You've already seen the other version. You left it on purpose. You know exactly what Idaho could become and exactly why it matters that it doesn't. That makes you one of the most valuable people in the state right now. Please use it. Look, I'm going to keep going back to California, and I'm sure I'm going to see in the comments, why don't you just move there? Because I love it here too. My people are in both places, Idaho and California, and every time I come home to Idaho, I'm reminded exactly what we have here and exactly what it takes to keep it. Beauty didn't break California. Ideas did, and ideas can be beaten by better ones. Lived out loud every day by people who actually give a damn. Idaho doesn't need fewer Californians, it needs more Idahoans. And look, if you are serious about getting moved to Idaho, you can reach out to me at the phone number or email address listed below. There's also a website that is really freaking good. You can look at homes and find more of my videos there, or you can scan the QR code and schedule a time to talk with me and my team. We will make sure that you get moved to the right place in Idaho that's going to fit you best. And I really look forward to seeing you on this video.